A lot of companies try a lot of pilots. AI have been trying a lot of pilots, but very few actually stick to production afterwards. And the ROI on the investment in AI in many companies is not met.
Welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, product localization, and global expansion. I'm Caterina from Undertow. We create and manage localization programs for B2B SaaS companies so they can grow globally. Today's episode is a little different. Nicola usually sits behind the microphone and asks all the questions. This time, someone else took over. Our guest is Valeria Nanni, Senior Localization Manager at Skyscanner, where she leads a cross-functional localization strategy and global programs across the business. Valeria heard that Nicola's book, Localization in the Age of AI, was out, and she had questions. So they flipped the format. She asked, he answered. They talked about the 4 pillars framework for building a localization program, why AI amplifies the problems in a weak program just as much as it amplifies the strength of a good one, what the translator's role actually looks like today, and why arguing about cost with leadership is usually the wrong fight to pick. So, enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast. Hi Valeria, how are you today?
Hello, I'm very good. How are you, Nicola?
Good. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. So this time around, rather than me asking questions to Valeria, it's going to be Valeria asking questions to me. Before we start, would you mind, Valeria, introducing yourself a little bit?
Sure. So, my name is Valeria Nanni. I'm Senior Localization Manager at Skyscanner, where I work cross-functional localization strategist and people manager. And I mainly partner with content leadership and ProdEng and others to ensure that we drive scalable global programs for Skyscanner.
So I hope you know who I am. I'm Nicola Calabrese, the founder of Undertow and the host of the Multilingual Content Podcast. Valeria, far away.
So shall we start with the big news, Nicola? So your book is out, Localization in the Age of AI. Big accomplishment, congratulations.
Thank you.
What inspired you to write such a book?
I've been thinking about writing a book on localization and how to manage it. I've been collecting notes for years now. And it's one of those things that you keep postponing, obviously, because it's not on top of the list always. It gets being pushed back. But now, obviously, in this couple of years with AI, there's been a lot of things changing. And what I noticed is that even with a lot of things changing very fast, the technology basically changing every day, a lot of the basics actually were the same. It just needed to be reframed in a different way. And a lot of hype that I was hearing, again, I don't know if it's just my bubble, but there's a lot of hype about AI replacing everything. And on the other hand, you got let's say the resistance. So we don't want to use AI. AI just produces rubbish. And as with many things in life, the truth really lies in the middle, I think. And there's a lot we use at Undertow as well. We use AI. We've been experimenting quite a lot. So I saw that many of the basics of managing localization programs were the same. They just framed differently. And AI was just an accelerant. So if you have rubbish in place, it will just accelerate problems all over the place. If you have a good basics, they will just help you jumpstart things and do things quicker and not necessarily with bad quality. So I was inspired by that. And I felt like it was needed to balance out a little bit these two extremes, all done by AI, nothing done by AI. I think in between, practically, because I know speaking with a lot of people in localization and not only in localization, they were trying to figure out how to use it. So I started collecting different experiences. And basically the book was born out of that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I live this AI transformation phase as well. And honestly, it feels a bit like trying to chase a moving target sometimes. And I don't know if this is happening to you too. How do you keep up with all the innovation? How do you make sure you're on top of what's going on AI and how you can use it in the localization industry?
So I do read up a lot and test a lot of tools, but also taking one thing at a time. So I had to decide, for example, at some point, there were a lot of things coming out for AI, let's say text, a lot of things about images. and a lot of things about video. So like I personally decided to focus first on the text because that's what like the majority of cases that we needed. Images and videos, like I put them, let's say second. So I say at some point I'll catch up with that. So still like with everything I do, I try to break it down to smaller pieces. Otherwise it is overwhelming because every day, like I'm signed up to several newsletters about AI and every day there's something new. But I mean, once you've moved past as well the marketing hype, a lot of the revolutionary things that they are supposed to change things from yesterday to today, like completely switch things around, they're actually minor improvements once you dig a little bit deeper. Then there are other things that are worth exploring further. So it takes a bit of time. And overall, I think the most important thing is like to try to figure out a way to not get information overload. There's so much stuff coming from all the different directions. So it takes a bit of patience and take the time to start from the basics, not jump start from like right away applying the latest thing that came out, understanding where everything is coming from and how it fits. Because the other things that I've seen is a lot of publications are, say, general use of AI. So there tends to be generic advice, while for localization specifically, we need to figure out like what some of the things, how we can actually apply, if it makes sense, or if it's just, as I found out, like a lot of things are basically reinventing the wheel, like stuff that we've been doing in localization for many years in a certain way. Some things, yeah, we can definitely improve and change completely. But other things, like I see people outside of the industry trying to rebuild stuff that has already been built, has already been perfectioned. It's not perfect, but it's been like improved over time. And we're kind of starting from scratch because AI makes it look like you can go quicker, but still like they're not going to catch up.
Yeah, it makes lots of sense. I feel that we are living a strange moment where we are still using kind of legacy localization practices or workflows, or processes or tools. At the same time, we are trying to, what as you say, like learn how AI can help us. So that takes time to discover and try and test. And at the same time, you have to deliver because there is the business as usual that needs to going on. And of course, everybody is in it. So it's not just something that relates to localization, right? So engineers are on it and they want to deliver faster. So you get more content that comes your way, more tests to do. So it's really hard to balance all of these elements, loads of moving parts. So I was wondering if you had any advice to people navigating this situation. How can you either build a localization program from scratch if there is the two situations, or either you're finding yourself with no localization program at all and you have to build it from scratch, or that you're trying to perfect or work with a localization program that is already in place, and what do you tackle first?
So let's say split the two scenarios. So paradoxically, I guess it might be easier to start something from scratch than completely re-engineer something that has been set. Not just because when you have something already in place to change it might be more difficult because you might have resistance from other people. It's just that it usually tends to mean that you're in a more complex stage, bigger company, more mature localization program. So there are more moving parts. If you're starting from scratch, a lot of times you're in a smaller setup. There's nothing in place, so you don't even have like a real benchmark to compare. So when you start from zero, anything kind of sounds good. When you're starting from something that works and you have to replace it with something completely different, but it's supposed to be better than what you've been building for years, that's more of an uphill challenge. So if you're starting from scratch, again, it will be the basics. So what I usually call the 4 pillars of setting up a program. So the first one is strategy. So looking at aligning the localization strategy with the business strategy. So to give you a clear example, it doesn't make sense to invest the same level of investment in all the languages if the business is not prioritizing all the languages, which probably isn't. It might sound basic, but sometimes that's the case because localization lives within a department sometimes, and doesn't even take into account the business priorities. So you might be spending resources, time, efforts on languages that are actually not mission critical for the business, and that time and resources are being taken away from markets that are actually important. So strategy is the first one, aligning localization strategy with the business strategy. The second one is people, because even with all this technology talk, there's still people moving things around and making things work. And I think increasingly, also because there's this idea of like AI replacing a lot of jobs, finding the right people is not easy. as you said before, there's increasing demand to having so many different skills, being able to do so many different things at the same time. Finding the right people is crucial and it's not easy. So it's important for them to be valued, both on the management side and on the language side as well. And then third is the technology. So it's the whole infrastructure that makes things possible to scale. That's third. So after people and strategy, because if you just decide AI is a tool, is not a strategy, is not how you do things in general. It's a part of the stack that you need to build. But there's so many other things that, again, we're not from this moment, but were before. If you think integrations, how integrations between platforms make things easy. AI, even before AI, that was crucial and made a big difference. And sometimes it can make even a bigger difference than implementing AI in some programs. And then the last but not least is the processes, which means having clear who's in charge of what, how things move around, what are the expectations, because that's another thing, expectation. And then having things written down, documented. So on one end, everybody is clear agrees on all the shareholders, all the stakeholders agrees on what are the expectations, what are the things the way things are done. And also, if you need to onboard new people, it's quicker rather than having to figure out things that is just in your head. If you don't have it written down, it's much more complicated. So these ones are the basics for starting out. When it's already in place, something already in place, I will start from auditing what you have. So auditing, having a look at what you already have in place, categorizing things and see, this is it. So you have a snapshot of where you are. And then also after that, think where you want to go. So where you want to take it, see the distance between there, and be realistic. And really, it's really important to you cannot do everything at once. You need to try to find the quick wins, the things that you can easily change. Let's say something basic, you've been bugged by the leadership to implement AI, and actually you already have something in place with machine translation that was going actually quite good. An easy win could be just to switch. It might sound silly, but you might just switch to AI, and that's really a small win to bring to leadership. We did implement AI in a process that was already in place. That's quick to do. It will make little difference, to be honest, in most cases, but it might be something to start from. And the other way is to see what you have already in place you can introduce AI. For example, there's the steps then putting together briefs, routing content, extracting terminology. All those things can be done with AI. Some of the stuff maybe you already have automated processes in place, so I wouldn't touch those. Or maybe there are others that before was too complicated to create. Let's say if you have an automation that before used to be sequential. So if this happened, do this. If this happened, do that. It was a little bit more complex to build because it was a little bit more unpredictable. With AI, maybe you can try to implement that and it's just one piece. And again, small wins, they make a difference now because the numbers say that a lot of companies try a lot of pilots. With AI, I've been trying a lot of pilots, but very few actually stick to production afterwards. And the ROI on the investment in AI in many companies is not met because everybody's rushing to prove to leadership that they're showing them that they're testing things with AI, but then there's no real results. After 1 or 2 years, there's no concrete results there. So a lot of time and resources have been spent and wasted, honestly, on trying things just for the sake of trying. So I think it's better, if you start from smaller steps, little wins that do make a difference. If the putting together a brief before was taking a lot of information from different people and manually compiling that, you can now build a very simple AI agents that compile that to get into a brief according to a specific template that you share. It doesn't sound huge, but it is huge for the person who actually have to put together all that information. They're going to save hours. And those hours are, again, numbers that can be put back to, if you want, its cost or its market velocity, depending how you want to frame it and how you can frame it to the leadership. And that's really something that you can show, and it's not super complicated to implement. Rebuilding the whole localization program, it will take a while. It will take a while. And don't do it if you feel especially if you've already been feeling for a while that you needed to revamp the localization program, definitely something that makes sense doing just as a long-term plan rather than expecting it to be quicker. And leadership in general, I've seen, they are expecting quicker results. So something to keep them at bay while you build the actual long play. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt your listening, but do you want to grow your B2B SaaS in international markets? Because every country is different, and what users value in one market doesn't necessarily matter in another one. At Undertow, we help B2B SaaS companies like yours succeed in their international expansion. We create customized localization strategies that address the unique challenges of each market. In this way, you can effectively attract, engage, and convert customers worldwide. Visit undertowlanguages.com to find out more. And now back to the show.
Thank you for this overview. So you said strategy, people, technology, and processes. When I'm thinking about my experience currently, technology is probably the part that is a bit more difficult to tackle. I guess it depends also on the kind of company you work with, the size, and also how it was built through the years. Now it's kind of difficult to change over. It kind of goes hand in hand, technology and processes. It's difficult to apply plug in AI on processes that were built through the years in different ways, with different engineering teams doing things differently with each other, maybe compared to a smaller size company that was built more recently already with AI basically embedded in the processes already and in the setup, right? It really needs a personalized approach, right? Every company, every team needs a targeted.
That's why, as I said, especially when it is already a program in place, the first step will be an audit, like having every area analyze and see where it stands. Maybe you're already pretty far ahead with the people, but technology is being left behind or it's a mess. So that might be, they also give you an indicator where to start from. You have to start somewhere at the end of the day. Yeah.
And I also wanted to touch on the people pillar. Where do you see the human expertise getting in action? Because obviously these days everything needs to be automated and AI and ready to consume. Where does this leave humans?
So I will split in two groups. So one is, let's say, localization management, and another one is, let's say, the language teams. So on the management side, there's definitely, as we already talked about quite a lot, an increasing level of technology that needs to be managed. And I think anybody who ever worked with technology programs, and the more technology is there, the more complexity it is to manage. And there usually needs to be people, teams, and different kind of programs and processes to be integrated. And then the other thing is increasingly stakeholder management, something that has always been critical. Again, always been critical. It's just even more critical, learning to be able to manage cross-departmental projects and initiatives is going to be increasingly more important. Because if before, sometimes you have localization maybe embedded within a specific department, which didn't used to be great anyway, but it was common. I think more and more, in a way, there's a chance for localization to be elevated a little bit more, to be more visible as a cross-department function. So the ability to manage different stakeholders, the expectations, the processes, the setting like a roadmap as well for the multilingual program. That's all the management side of things. On the language side of it, language team. So what I mean is translators or editors, language specialists. There I see the things are changing. In a way, it's changing fast for everybody. But I think faster for the language specialists. It is a reality. There's a lot of translators are leaving the industry. I know also on the management side, but I think it's even more on the translators side are leaving the industry because the interesting work is drying up. Everything is post-editing now, either done by machine translation or by AI. That's most of the work that is around, to be honest. But what I see is there's a chance here to reposition the language specialist not as somebody who just fix the mistakes of the AI, but somebody who actually steer the AI in the right direction. So that's what I call in the book, I call the language intelligence lead or language intelligence specialist. So somebody who actually takes ownership of their language and make sure that all the linguistic assets, so the levers that we have available to steer the AI in the right direction, are actually in line with the brand. So it's terminology, so glossaries, the style, so style guides and tone of voice instructions, and prompts as well. Prompts that are specific for different content types. So if the AI is translating a user interface strings, it needs different, say, prompts and instructions compared to if it's translating a help center article. So that's where the specialists can basically take ownership of their language at their level, and then still obviously fix, especially for the critical content that has, say, a higher risk or higher value in the customer in the journey, the customer journey, to review that, but not just to fix those mistakes, but also to figure out, categorize what mistakes, what patterns are there that are recurring across the AI, because the AI tends to make mistakes across patterns. So identify those and fix back the linguistic assets at the source, so as to create a loop rather than just a linear progression. When they find a mistake, they don't just fix that instance, they fix the resources that the AI is using to generate output. So next time around, that mistake will not happen. That's a role that is different from just fixing the output. It gives them a more strategic relevance, a role for also like this is a continuous job because there might be new products, there might be brand updates. We all know that, new features. There might be new things to implement or changes in the way, let's say in the strategy, the approach to, in some cases, there might be a target audience that changes and shifts differently. So you need to readapt all this. And it differentiates them from, if they're just somebody fixing the output, there's a illusion, because I still think it's not correct to think like that, but the illusion that you can give it to review to anybody who speaks the language. So if you have somebody in customer success, they can review that, or somebody in sales, they can review that. Apart from the fact that that means they will be taking time away from their main task, it's also like in this new role, the language skills and the cultural knowledge that the language specialists and translators have, it's very different, and it's gonna make the difference between that and anybody who just happens to speak the language.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I was also wondering, connected to this, how do you see, because this loop that you're describing is somehow a quality assurance loop, a training loop, so that eventually we will be able to get to a point where we can trust AI to do translation or not. What do you think?
I think it really depends on the content type, in the sense that, again, there might be some content that is not as critical, or the risk is not as high as with other content. I'll give a concrete example. If you have the landing page of a new product, it's more critical than, let's say, a release note that is just going to be buried inside the product page. So obviously, maybe for the release note, you can get to a point where you have AI just doing that, nobody really checking it, because even if there are mistakes, are not usually a high risk mistake. You're not going to lose customer because in a release note, there was something that was mistranslated. But if there is in the landing page that is actually going to convert your customers, there's something that sounds really bad in the market and there's a really negative impact on the market, that's a bigger risk. So again, from a point of view like risk assessment, it makes sense to still have somebody review. What is going to happen is, and is already happening, is that you'll have people reviewing not everything, but specific and key assets. That's going to increase. But again, that will free up resources as well to do more creative work that actually need people to do that, because AI is not really great at that. And not only because AI is not great at that, it's also because it can do more targeted for a specific country. So adapting to the real pain and needs of that market, the culture and the way the customs they have in the country. So that will free up that. It might not still be that visible yet, I think, but because AI gets you like 80% there, let's say, more or less. Once everybody's that 80%, the 20% is your competitive advantage. If your competitors are doing something extra, they will get ahead. If you're doing something extra, you get it. So it will push up this customization basically for markets that will be available and possible only, again, by people who know the market and the language very well, not by anybody who just happens to speak the language.
So it will become a more specialized, personalized kind of content that we deliver to people, right?
Yeah.
And what you're describing is some sort of matrix that we have to have. So maybe a content review at source that can be done maybe with AI, I don't know, if your source is English, and then an analysis of the content type. So what is the content type that maybe is just internal and can go out within the company, just done by AI, because the aim there is just understanding, right? And it's low risk, it's not customer facing. If there is any misunderstanding, can be resolved within the company. But then obviously there is a branding campaign, there is other type of content or legal that needs more attention. So reviewed source, content type, which needs to be assessed based on risk. And then according to that, there can be different workflows. Now it can be AI only, can be AI with the human view or sample view, or maybe full human review. It's highly,
or even full creation from scratch, like from a brief rather than and if you think about it, I mean, it is, again, what I meant at the beginning, some of the basics are still valid, just reframed for AI in the age of AI, in the sense that before we used to do that as well for localization. Mm-hmm. We had like raw machine translation that was maybe for, let's say, customer reviews on website. because it was a big volume and not high risk, you just put a disclaimer that it was automatically translated. Then you had other content that was machine translated and then reviewed by people. Then you had content that was fully done by people and content need to be created from scratch. That's just being redefined by AI. I use the framework that is, let's say, more non-localization facing or friendly. That is just the translate, adapt, and create framework, which are like micro categories where you have translate, as you said, like something that just needs to be translated. So doesn't need to be readapted or changed too much for the market, the target market. Adapt is something that might need some more rework. So you need to change and adapt, and the create will be created from scratch. And the role of AI changes across those. In the translate, it will be mostly AI. In the adapt, it will be AI maybe do the first layer, and then the human make a lot of changes on top of that, potentially, depending on the market and the content. And you got the create maybe where the AI just has a role as a sidekick that can help you if you need, but the AI is the people are the one doing most of the work.
Yeah. And the human intervention may vary as well based on the type of language we're talking about. Some languages will be more complex for AI or may have more or less data available, so the AI can perform better or worse. So it's another complexity for those companies that operate in multiple languages and not just like a couple or kind of similar family and all that.
But either way, if you want to see like positively what I was talking before about like reallocating resources, if you have like 40 languages, but 20 of them more or less are done fine by AI, that means you will have to invest less to put them up to the quality you need. And the money that you're saving there, you can invest it in the other 20. Before, what would have happened that you would probably either drop some languages or have a very subpar quality on those. So that's possibly will help like increase the quality. Obviously, that depends on the program and the business goals, but that could even help like reallocate resources for languages, low resource languages that are not translated very well by AI. And that's important as well. Again, going back to the stakeholder management, for people managing localization, managing expectation of leadership, and so they can understand that AI on Spanish is not the same as AI on Vietnamese. You're not going to get the same quality level. So to bring it up here where it needs to be, it's going to be a smaller, say, workload for Spanish compared to Vietnamese. Sometimes it might not even make sense for some use cases to actually use AI at all.
And you touched a bit on investment now, no? We are allocating resources, money, where we spend it. So there is this misconception that apart from being much faster, AI translations are also cheaper. So I was wondering what your thoughts around this would be, because leaders will always come to you and ask, so when can we reduce budget now that we're using AI? Where are the efficiencies? Why are we spending more now that we have AI?
In general, like, I don't like this framing is around like a cost center framing. So like we need to reduce cost. And I always think like, zero is always cheaper than anything. So you can just use, Google Translate or ChatGPT, that's going to be free. But the cost that you will actually pay is on the market. If you start publishing stuff that is utter rubbish, that will damage your reputation. And recovering from that is much more expensive than what you can possibly spend in localization. There have been several cases, again, even before AI, of companies doing very poor localization, getting really damaged in target markets. And then to recover, they had to spend like 3-4 times what they invested initially, or what they would have had to invest initially to get a proper localization. So that's usually the one side of thing. The other thing is looking at the whole process. So if you're making things go quicker in one tiny step in the whole system that is localization, there might be improvements, but on one end, it might generate delays on other sides. Like if AI is not fully integrated or properly integrated, you might have people copy pasting from ChatGPT. I see that happening. So that means you have something that is manually done. So you save time on the translation bit, but you spend time on like copy pasting things across platform. So maybe what you already had in place was not that bad once you look at the whole process. And the other is again, like what's going to happen to if it's just cost? Why are you looking just at cost? Just to understand that, why is it just reducing cost? I know there's always want to reduce the cost, but maybe it's just not a matter of spending less. It's just investing it more smartly and looking at what it generates. Localization at the end of the day allows to generate more revenue because it allows you to not only to enter a new market, but also like to expand and make the difference with your competitors who might have like a not so great experience for local audiences.
Absolutely. I also had a couple of points on my side on this. We are seeing an increase of content being generated in our company because of the use of AI. So content designers and others in the team are using tools that help them produce more. So there is more coming as well.
Yeah.
So yes, we're using AI, but also volumes are increasing.
Yeah.
And even if we are using AI smartly, so, as you were saying, for some content, maybe there is a different tiering, but it's still more content to deal with. And also the cost of AI itself is increasing. For leaders who are only looking at cost, we were saying before, there is bad news here. So there are a couple of things going on that are not necessarily going to reduce the cost, rather change the way we're using that money or that investment.
But I think, like, from a business point of view, if you're hiring more salespeople, that's definitely going to increase your cost. But if those salespeople are bringing more revenue, that's worth it. That's an investment. So that's the same thing. If you have more content, you're available in more markets, that means they're going to bring more revenue in. So that should be the conversation. Like, looking, is this actually bringing in more revenue or not, rather than the cost in itself? Because if it's bringing more revenue, it's absolutely justified. If it's not, it might make sense to scale down some markets or refocus the activities. But if it's just looking at cost, yeah. I mean, when you grow, all the costs increase. So,
yeah. Oh, so I think we're almost at time. So before we leave, I wanted to ask you, where can people find the book and where can they follow your work?
Okay, so the book is available on Amazon. So you can just search for Localization in the Age of AI and you should find it. And you can follow me on LinkedIn. I post quite regularly, or try to.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicola, for this time, for this conversation. I think we'll hear more about localization in the era of AI, and there's so much more to talk about here. And so I'm very happy that we had this opportunity to have a chat, and let's do it again soon.
I think it might make sense to do it in a bit, to see things are going to change. Things are going to change, definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Undertow. We help B2B SaaS companies grow in any language. Get in touch if you want to know more. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. If you want to support us, remember to give 5 stars to the podcast. See you next time.